Alright, you're here, everyone, for the Elden Ring closing thoughts and what I have to say about this game and my opinion on it. I'm gonna kind of cut this intro short and whatnot, but let's begin and let's try to find a start point. Um, so I finished Elden Ring, I think, 4 to 5 months ago from now. I had so much fun playing it. I was really into it. Um, it was kind of around that time after I beat Kirby in the Forgotten Land, where I took my journey into Elden Ring. Um, and overall, I think Elden Ring is definitely one of the best games this year. It'll definitely be a contender for maybe this decade, depending on how many games come out, because this is only 2022. We still have 7 to 8 more years of games for this decade. And so yeah, there's much more to come. Um, but overall, yeah, this was great. This was a great game. Um, and I'm excited to play more once the DLC comes out. Which, while I pretty sure I don't know anything about the DLC topics or whatnot, but all I know is that there hasn't been like any release date from what I've heard. So I don't know if we'll be getting it either like late this year or early or just next year and whatnot. And then I will continue on for that for another time and whatnot whenever that comes into my schedule. So I think where we should start is kind of the background, the story and whatnot, the premises, um or really kind of the characters honestly, because the characters in terms of this game, aside from Ronnie and Melina, um, there wasn't much character background that I did aside from Burnout, Ronnie, the Volcano Manor, Melina, and yeah. Um, so how the story kind of begins off is that there is a neat search of a new Elden Lord of the Erd Tree and whatnot, and us, the Tarnished, are there just to make our fate. And so we must head to the Erd Tree, but we have multiple tasks to face off against. And um, one of those major things is the other lords and whatnot that we must topple. This includes Godric, Godric, I think Renala, I am not sure though, Morgot, Radon, um, Melina, Mog, Godfrey, and then eventually Radagon. Um, but yeah, that is kind of who we have to tackle. The reason why I don't think there's gonna be much mentioning of story is what is basically for me the story is really dependent on paying attention to the lore and the background of characters other than just playing through the game because um, I did went to this game without much focus on the story and whatnot, and so I just kind of played to see how I would do, what questions I would take care of, how I was going to venture through this open world experience, and overall, I was I was having a really good time. The characters. So yeah, this is the other thing that's kind of gonna be short-lived and whatnot. But the characters that we'll mainly talk about is Ronnie, Melina, and I guess Burnow, because Burnow's kind of within the Volcano Manor, and I did Burnow's quest. So I'll start with Burnow. Burnow was a knight that we found in Limgrave around near Godric's castle, or slash Stormvale Castle, that was a recusant in the Volcano Manor that we met. And he helped us do tasks and whatnot, and we repaid the favor with Burnow and so that I could handle the volcano manor and fight Rykard and whatnot. Which in the end I did not do the dungeon like the dungeon for the volcano manor. Instead, I did the quest line and got granted to fight Rykard, and yeah, within defeating Rykard, we not only the volcano manor was closed, but the volcano manor was closed, and we continued, and Bernal left his post and whatnot. We also got some cool stuff and whatnot, but yeah, we eventually meet up with Bernal again in the crumbling farm Azula after we take down the fire giant, and then we met him along, and we faced off Godskin duo with Bernal, and then we eventually fought Bernal as he targeted us, and we defeated him. And yeah, that was kind of it for Bernal and whatnot. I think it was really interesting seeing how kind of he went towards and kind of what we actually saw him as. And so yeah, that was really cool. The other thing that I think was really neat was I think Bernal himself gave one of the coolest armor sets, and kind of his background was unique as he was an Ash of Wars dude, and yeah, I really did enjoy that. So Bernal, definitely a cool character, even if it was not much of a quest line, but it was cool in the end. And I did have to postpone it to fight Morgot as that was required in the middle of my path. Um, Next up, Melina. Melina, yeah, I'm really sad with what happened with Melina. Um, Basically, Melina is your maiden and whatnot that you hang around with, and to basically help you become an Elden Lord. And she took risks and whatnot, and she also kind of disappeared for a bit when we reached the Lane. However, kind of her character and whatnot, taking us to the Round Table Hold, being born in the air tree and whatnot, which was really cool, and she helped us take care of things, and I think it was really neat that Melina was basically there as our voyage and helped us along. It is really sad though that for what my ending was going to be, Melina sacrificed herself. And so it really was one of the most depressing parts of the game. And I really was saddened by that. But overall, uh, really cool character. And yeah, her burning the Erd tree and then us finishing off the game within due respect. It did leave us to what we really helped take care through. Probably the longest part of this character is Ronnie. Um, Ronnie was the character ending I went along with. Ronnie helped me get a horse and whatnot. I cannot remember his name. It starts with a T, TR, I think. But yeah, Ronnie granted us a horse for our travelings, and Ronnie was eventually set in Lernia, to which we went to after defeating Godric, in which we went and handled Renala, but we didn't kill her. We fought Renala, and Renala is the mother of Ronnie, from what I believe, and Ronnie's kind of posting there as Nala's battle was really cool. And so then eventually I went on to Calia Manor to go and meet Renala after fighting Loretta's shadow at least. And yeah, we did that, and that was cool. And so, yeah, we started Renala's quest and met EG and Blyde. And so she sent us out to go to Nokron City. However, in order to do Nokron City, we had to postpone our quest to fight Radon, or more so, Radon's kind of required step for Ronnie's quest. You do have to fight Radon in order to get Ronnie's ending. So yeah, we fought Radon, and I did fight him post-patch and whatnot. And yeah, Radon pre-patch would probably make that a living nightmare. But we'll continue on with Radon later. But yeah, we eventually went on to Nokron Sea to get the finger slaying blade or something along that line. And we went ahead to talk to Ronnie again to eventually noticing that Ronnie was into a doll spirit that we had to defeat some shadow. And that shadow was placed in Blide's shadow. And so Ronnie's ending, well, no, Ronnie eventually kind of disappeared from us again. And so, in order to finish up with Ronnie's quest, we had to fight one last boss, which I think was really cool, that I did defeat on my second try, I believe, which was, his name was, starts with an A, it is Natural Born, Astel, Natural Born of the Void, which was a really cool fight, really weird, how it's an existing form, and, eventually once you defeat Estelle in the Lake of Rot, you go up ahead to that place where you couldn't visit it unless if you took part into that. But it was really cool how we went up a whole elevator to meet up to like a broken down church that had a hole that led to Ronnie and whatnot. But there was a dragon in our way, which I did not go ahead to fight. I instead went around to the church instead of fighting that dragon. Because, yeah, I didn't want to deal with two bosses in a row. At least I showcased it. But, yeah. Um, after after we go into the hole, into the cavern and whatnot, we place the ring that we got from Renala's castle with that key and whatnot that I did forget to mention till now. But we placed that in her hand, or at least her decaying body that she used to before she moved on into a different body. And eventually she notices, and we're engaged with Ronnie. And what that leaves us to do next is complete the game, in which we did. We defeated Radagon, and we got Ronnie's ending. Ronnie's ending is really cool. It's the Age of the Stars. It's a whole new order and whatnot that she tries to set up to remove the Golden Order that plagued us in the Round Table Hold that was an absolute filth place. And yeah, I don't blame that one guy who sold sorceries to us or incantations to us, and he just like, I'm leaving this place. I'm doing my own adventures and whatnot. We lost D to Blight. Sir Gideon was a bit of a bitch and turned on us because he says we're not good enough. We, calling us skill issue and whatnot, but we eventually reversed it back to him. You know, that's how, we prevented it. And yeah, really cool and all. So yeah, that's the characters I want to talk about. Aside from like, there is the Tarnished and whatnot. There are the boss characters. Radon, he was poisoned with Scarlet Rot after his battle with Melina, which was a standstill or standoff or whatever. But yeah, him decaying to Scarlet Rot and us going ahead to fight Radon to put him out of his misery and for his beloved horse that he cared for. Yeah, that was really cool and all. Let me take off my headset real quick. Alright, there we go. And yeah, so now let's talk the gameplay and bosses aspect, which is probably the big part. As much as I do want this to be a longer closing thoughts, there really isn't much I could go off with the story. But so obviously during our times, the mini bosses and whatnot, yeah, it's pretty cool concept overall. I do like going into places and just fighting these small mini bosses, that you can just eradicate once you're much stronger and whatnot. You can clear up in like West Peninsula or Western Peninsula, Limgrave, Lernia, Mountaintop of the Giants, Langdale, Caelid, all those cool places and whatnot. And yeah, really cool. And yeah, as much as like per- particularly the bosses or these mini bosses and whatnot, they get repetitive, and they eventually just get stale and whatnot, and they're kind of just the same things over and over. And I really don't have much care for beating after beating them, because all they really grant is just stuff for us to collect, side quests, and overall, it just really wasn't that much that I cared for. I really didn't have much to really, you know, find unique to that. And yeah, so I think uh with that semi bosses out of the way, and these dragons. Let's talk the first boss that I think I had one of the most troubling fights with for a first real boss fight. Morgot, the Fell Omen, was pretty neat, and uh, when it really just turned out to be kind of a shade and Morgot, the real fight of Margit slash Morgot, which in the end was a repeat, and there was apparently another repeat of the same fight again. I don't know why, but yeah, it was really, kind of neat how how like this fight was. It was on top of a broken bridge and whatnot, and he had some tricks up to his sleeve. His obvious memeable quote, "Put these foolish ambitions to rest," and yeah, never hear the end of that. Eventually, I defeated him off screen. I kind of got in the midst of it and just didn't do much afterwards. I'm sorry for that. Um, and yeah, I beat the fight uh, with some of my three wolves and whatnot. But yeah, I beat the fight, and then eventually we head on towards Stormvale Castle, which is a cool place and whatnot. And we go ahead to fight the from what I believe is Godric. Godric is one of the coolest fights in my opinion. Um, Not on the harder aspect of the game. He has a lot of delayed attacks and whatnot, so it's easier to read after the first few attempts. Um, his his kind of gimmick really does rely on his fire in the second phase, because after the first phase, which is pretty easy enough to get through, he brings out that dragon head, which is one of the coolest cutscenes ever. And he breathes in that thing. Breathing fire onto the ground is one of the most ridiculous things ever. And his attacks overall are just really are time diluted, but they get easier the more you read onto them with each attempt and whatnot. And overall, he is the slow, hard-hitting boss that can be easy to read from the first few attempts, but is one of the coolest fights I have fought in the game. And overall, that being an end to Stormvale and kind of Limgrave's story for the bit, until eventually you had to go to Caelid from that point, and then but we us us reaching Lernia next, and Lernia had Renala, and Renala is a really unique, and Raya Lucaria Academy is one of the most aesthetically pleasing places I've ever visited in Elden Ring, and the Red Wolf of Radagon also being a factor into the game and whatnot. It was really cool, and yeah, I really did enjoy um, that Renala's fight, as Renala is a magic-born, blessed two-phase fight that first is one of the easiest phases in the game, probably if not the easiest phase in the game. Renala just sends like tons of chip damage books at you, chandeliers that are easy to dodge. You had to go ahead and fight the. You had to go ahead and take out the one singing and whatnot, and then Renala is down on the ground, which you can pack your DPS, which is a DPS check and whatnot, to see if you can two-phase or two-phase or not. If not, the three-phase is the normal standard. But yeah, we then get the second phase, which is really cool. Um, it's not too much, but it's a lot more extended difficulty, as her magic really is um, her magic really changes it up, as Ronnie sends you into one of the best battle arenas ever. It's so cool. It's so aesthetically pleasing. It is deep. It is just one of the most beautiful fights in the game, and really does set a tone as a top 5 boss fight. While on difficulty terms, it's not too bad compared to most fights in the game. Um, it still surprised me when she sent a fucking dragon towards me, and having to deal with a shade of Graydon, or Abdul or some whatever their name was. Were yeah, her saying that was not very cool, but thank you anyways. And then giants, and then dogs, fucking dogs, and then a bloodhound fang guys and whatnot. Overall, really one of the coolest concept fights in the game. I really enjoyed it. And if you're a magic wielder, have fun. That is probably not a very fun fight for you if you are a magic wielder. So yeah, um, we didn't kind of move away from Langdell, as to continue on with Langdell, we go ahead to well, the Atlas Plateau mainly, but the Atlas Plateau to Langdale Capital. We go ahead to Caelid to go ahead. First of all, that first duo fight that I finished off screen and showed on screen. That fight is really, really annoying, and I did not like how it was. Skill issue, yes, skill issue. But I didn't like it. I think it was a pretty poorly designed gank fight, and yeah, I did not enjoy that. I really wish more gang fights were like the Abyss Watchers or the fucking Demon Princes. And the Demon Princes definitely being one of the coolest fights in the game. Holy hell, that was so cool. But yeah, the the fight with Radon, one of the coolest fights ever, that I went into with no summons, and none of the kind of the old warrior summon things that you could use to your advantage pre-patch, because pre-patch for Dawn was one hellish fight that most people have fought in Elden Ring that got nerfed to hell, to which I fought, and I beat Radon third try, and overall, which was one of the most funnest fights, one of the coolest fights ever, one of the coolest characters ever, that I really wish wasn't nerfed to hell as he was. And yeah, that really did bum me out in the game, and I really do wish it was kind of kind of done better. And so yeah, I think next up after Radon, what would be would probably be, I think the next big fight I technically had was the Regal Ancestor Spirit and Estelle, which we will discuss now. The Regal Ancestor Spirit, yeah, first fucking try, easy fight. It does heal if you're not careful, but overall it was not bad of a fight. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed it. Um, overall, I think the fight was really cool aesthetically, but yeah, I think Regal and Sister Spirit could have been a lot easier of a fight, considering it's a legend boss fight, which is kind of funny. But yeah, really aesthetically pleasing, but pretty easy overall. Um, the Then we get to the fight of Astel, Natural Born of the Void, one of the coolest looking bosses ever, one of the most freakish bosses looking ever. I really like the design though. It being an absolute um, unique fight for its galactical, its galactical attack patterns, its unique space aura around it, kind of its teleportation sends asteroids down on you or meteoroids. Um, and its fucking teleport grab jump scare attack. That's just one for the ages. Um, but yeah, its anti-gravity attack, and overall, just one of the coolest fights ever that I did defeat my second try. I do think he is one of the more toned down fights and more easier approaching, but still generally a unique fight to which of its end and one of the coolest looking fights I think would be qualified as either top 6 or top 5 even fight for me. I really liked it. I think it was really neat and a step out of place. And I mean, hey, it leads to Ronnie quest line finishing up before we had to eventually beat the game, which was really neat. And I overall enjoyed it for what it was. And the Lake of Ra is a really cool place. And yeah, um, next up, um, next up would be I think the fight with Morgot. Because Morgot came before Reichard, and Morgot is a play on Margit, which is a much more crazier fight, but would probably be easier because of your experience with Margit. But overall, still a really dope fight and whatnot. I really wish that what took it away from it was the fact that you already fought a rendition of Morgot, which is Margit. You can fight two of them apparently, which is really, really annoying. But overall, Margit being or Morgot being a really unique fight that you had to fight in order to get to the mountaintop of the giants, and Morgot really does steal his place as a more difficult fight if you were already struggling with Margit. But overall, I really think Morgot was unique. He has new attack patterns to him. He has the same old, summoning a hammer to your doom. This time he has a spear to that. He had blades and swords. His cane turns out to be a Majora's Maskus sword, and I think that was really cool. And so yeah, Morgot still a really cool fight, even if what really kind of makes me a little annoyed is the amount of bosses they overuse for this game, which really does bum me out. Next up we do have Rykard. Rykard was neat in of itself, but or yeah, Rykard was a really cool fight. The music was jamming. The fucking dialogue and voices in this fight was so cool. May not be one of the harder fights as it is a gimmick fight. You had to use the spear, which, to be fair, is one of the coolest fucking things ever. It's kind of like Yorm the giant fight, where a gimmick really does tone down the ease of the fight, but in all, it's an underrated fight for how fucking cool the backstory and how cool the concept of the battle is, and that's what Rykard is as well. Rykard is a super cool fight that while it doesn't take too much of your skill to impact, and while it is a two-phase fight that starts with the Serpent King, um, and there is a different alternate game over if you get hit by the serpent attack and lose all your health, which I didn't have occur to me. He just flung me down, being like him. And yeah, Rykard's sick ass blade and his really hectic fucking skull move and whatnot that you're just running away from because it's just so fucking crazy. And yeah, um, eventually staggering the heart and the piece of his head and whatnot, and finishing him off. And yeah, really one of the coolest fights that I've ever experienced in Elden Ring. Yeah, it really is. I think one for the books. Um, the next up we have the Fire Giant. Another really cool fight, but honestly, this fight, aside from his cool aesthetic and whatnot, and his like cool, neat horse battle, this fight was kind of messy all over the place. The buggy mess that I had to that having to endure when he not only gets stuck on a ledge that you have to approach, but he can also die on said ledge, which can cheese him. Um, the other thing is that you, or in my case, I apparently died as soon as his cutscene ended, his second cutscene, and that was cool. That was cool. Overall, it's kind of weird for how it is. You can break his chain, obviously, and he's obviously pissed, But overall, it really kind of wasn't much. And the Fire Giant, while I really do like kind of the fight where it took place and its background, could be better. Could be better. Um, we then eventually get to the crumbling Fata Missoula, which we go ahead to fight Godskin Duo, which I definitely did probably cheese the fuck out of being it on my second try. Um, yeah, heard that one was an absolute torture fest, and it's a gang fight, so that's cool. Hopefully, it's better than the Misbegotten, the Lion 9 Misbegotten, which I forgot to mention about the Lion 9 Misbegotten in the Castle Moor, which was interesting. Fast-paced fight. Overall, not much to care for. Um, but he has, delays. He has that roar, which stuns you, so you have to be quick on your toes, and you have to, pay attention to either if it's a delay attack or if it's a non-delay attack. But overall, that one really wasn't much I could care for. But yeah, the same with the Godskin Duo. It doesn't look like much I could care for, aside from the fact that the Godskin fat noble dude is apparently a hellish fight when you take him to a second phase. So fun. um, we then get on to probably my favorite fight in the game. One of the most fights that I struggled with because I couldn't get the concept of getting close to the fight, or getting close to him, because I didn't think it was going to work. Um, the Beast Clergyman to Malekith the Blackblade. This fight was super cool, and I enjoyed it a lot. I really, really had an enjoyment for the fight. I what I could say about Malekith is, while the Beast Clergyman I could get onto very easily, I could understand the attack patterns pretty much. Sometimes making throwing because I'm getting hit too much, so Malekith is going to be a pain for me, which basically was the case. Malekith was a super agile, fast-paced, um, large hitbox fight that has, one of the most annoying attacks, obviously, the AoE attack that he slams on top of you. He then has this cool ass movement, which he just flings projectiles at you. And like I said, people that haven't struggled this fight that just got up close to him, I didn't understand that concept. Like I didn't try it because I thought I could detect it that it was going to be a suicide move, and whatnot. But it is just better getting closer to him than just trying to wait it out, waiting for an opportunity to attack and then moving back. You know, it's just it kind of made it a little relentless that I had to face, and overall, it just was one to. It was definitely one that I will say is one of my favorite fights that I've ever fought in the kind of the Souls-like games and whatnot from the lads of FromSoft and whatnot. Really cool fight. I really recommend. It's also a mandatory story fight. You have to fight Malekith, so have fun with that. But yeah, we then eventually go ahead to discuss the bird farm, the infamous exploit. Yeah. Um. The fight with Mog is another dope ass fight. I loved it. I really did enjoy fighting Mog, and he has, in my opinion, the best theme in the game. It's so cool. But yeah, it's a hectic fight, and Mog's story of Mikola is so fucking cool. Basically, Mog kidnapped Mikola to make a rebirthing of Mikola into his form so that he could become a god and whatnot. But in reality, what he tried to do just destroyed Mikola's inner being, and him to raise his dynasty for Mikola to become a mindless soul that Mog raised. That Melania, probably being depressed and shit and whatnot from that form. And so, yeah, Mikola uh, was a really damned soul that Mog stole from Melania and whatnot. But Mog's fight overall was cool. His trident of blood, his fights to, or his absolute, his ear-piercing theme, and overall one of the coolest fights that I think I have ever faced. Another one for the top 5 books, and yeah, it's really one that I enjoyed. So yeah, overall, definitely one that I could enjoy in the slightest. So then we get on to Sir Gideon Pass. That fight is just not much. Just spamming magic, telling us we have a major skill issue in the game, without even fighting him in the first start because we're not worthy enough to beat the game until we fight Godfrey, which I think would have been a cool ass fight if my frames didn't just bug out into the fight, and so I just wasn't having that great a time because attack patterns were so much harder to read and whatnot, and it was annoying for how it went. So yeah, Godfrey, splitting into 2 phases as well. One being him with his axe and whatnot, and the other being Horalao, which is a wrestler, the Undertaker. Fucking that's sick. But yeah, this fight really is something cool, I would say, and overall, I had a lot of enjoyment with I had a lot of enjoyment with how the fight was gonna be if it wasn't for frames deducting many points, but that mainly wasn't on Godfrey. That was just the frames of laying down. I'm gonna have to check my fucking my Nvidia software, my capture, my graphics card, and whatnot to see if it's on my end. But if it's an Elden Ring issue, from what I've heard on PC, isn't the best. I've heard it's not the best, which is kind of sad because I bought it on PC to play it. But yeah, overall, I think I would have a lot more fun with Godfrey if I didn't have a frame drop off to 20 frames per second. So yeah. Um, we then get onto Radagon and the Elden Beast, which in the end I think was kind of an underwhelming fight. Radagon was cool and whatnot. His relentless pushing and pressure on towards you that you couldn't avoid as much because he wouldn't stop, and you needed to fight patterns with attack, and overall that was kind of the rough the rough fight to take care of. But then Elden Beast came, And one of the easiest final bosses I fought, and in the Souls-like games, I struggled with Soul Cinder. I struggled with Gay with the Slave Knight Gale. I struggled with Midir, Darkened Midir, and Black Flame Ariadel. Well, Black Flame's Freed and Ariadel. So yeah, that was something. Uh, I feel like I should turn up this audio real quick. But yeah, um, overall, that was a really cool fight, but it was really underwhelming. Really underwhelming. So then we move on to like the final fight. Melina. The fight that I attempted. Yes, I can see Melina as the hardest boss in the game. That's obvious. I beat Melina. I off screen so that I could pay more attention and whatnot. And overall, Melina was hard. She was hard. The healing, honestly, if it weren't for the healing, the boss would be super much more easier. But the healing really makes it different as her attack patterns are easier to understand, and this boss in particular is super easy to read. Or more so just super easy to cheese. She gets staggered so easily. If you use Malekith's blade with the correct attributes and whatnot, she gets staggered like none to man. Her whirlwind blade move or her waterfowl dance and whatnot, yeah, that's a pain in the ass and whatnot. But if you're able to, you can't outlive it. And so, yeah, it's kind of like that. But overall, some of her other attack patterns aren't too bad. And so, yeah. Overall, I think it is a really cool fight. I really do wish the bosses were much more kind of compelling in this game. Because what I do think takes away is the amount of use on bosses, kind of the overtuning on some bosses, kind of, the boring things. I still think there are some dope ass fights in this game. I still think that is one of the greatest things. But overall, the bosses here in this game are kind of kind of grow stale after a while. And I really do wish the DLC makes us some great ass bosses. But yeah, what does take away this game from its masterpiece is the fact that the bosses, which are the things that we're most looking forward to in this game, they kind of fall because it's a repeat and a repeat and it's the same thing. It's like different things if you're going to different small mini dungeons and whatnot. It like build crafting is amazing in this game though, but there's some builds though that deplete bosses. The blade builds, oh my god, the blade builds are busted. Or at least during the time that I played, I don't know if like any patches made blade builds absolutely dumbed down and whatnot. But during the time I was playing, blade builds uh busted, and mimic tier busted. Yeah. Summons are, yeah, they're busted in this game. You should definitely power them up if you want to breeze through this game. It makes Kirby look harder with fucking Chaos Elfless. That was a pain in the ass. But yeah. Overall, while the bosses are do grow stale from time to time, there are some really cool bosses. There is some really cool enjoyments that I had from this game, and overall, I really did enjoy the bosses. So now we talk gameplay. The gameplay, yeah, the gameplay was really cool. I think I think gameplay is one big ideal that makes Elden Ring such a good game. Is the gameplay is done right? It's clean gameplay. It's not bad, camera positions and whatnot. No, the targeting system is better than it usually was. The game is open worlds, so it's not sticking you to a linear path and whatnot, so that you don't have to, stick with it. You don't have to separate. You can just like do whatever you want, and the gameplay is there for it. The fast travels, the horse, that starts with T and R. and we're just gonna say treacherous. Treacherous, really cool thing. The fall damage is deceiving and whatnot, and it's kind of a little annoying sometimes. The and like some areas like Carmeline Fathom Azula, which is like really cool. I really wish there was more to and whatnot. And overall, the gameplay on its own was really cool. It was really good. I enjoyed it. I really wish that there was much more to this. Aside from gameplay being absolutely much better than its current predecessors. Aside from Sekiro I think still absolutely did phenomenal job on the gameplay. The gameplay is great and it's amazing for Sekiro. So yeah, Elden Ring in my opinion didn't top Sekiro, but still much better than its predecessors within Dark Souls and Demon Souls. So yeah, that's it. There is the endings and whatnot. I was going to talk about the Frenzied Flame ending, but I still think it would be better if you experienced it on your own. And overall, I really do think you should take a look into that and do whatever you want, because I'm happy with my ending. I hanged out with Ronnie and whatnot. And yeah, overall, I guess that's it. I'm going to put on this song real quick. Gonna mute this ad. Uh, it's Halloween Kills. Or Halloween Ends. Are y'all gonna watch Halloween Ends? I think it's gonna be fun. I think it's gonna be a cool movie. So yeah. Anyways, let's do it. So yeah. Is Elden Ring Game of the Year for this year? I do not think we should be so quick on that because Elden Ring is definitely an amazing experience, and I think it is one you should definitely take into. I do not think it's a masterpiece, though. I do not think it is that masterpiece status that it wants, because in how I want in a game is everything to be at least done correctly, as the bosses, like I said, kind of are one underwhelming, especially the final boss. But yeah, overall, this game definitely has it to take the Game of the Year spot. While I do think it should receive much more competition than it is granted for, because there are games out there that are doing really good. Xenoblade 3 came out. I know a lot of people love that. Uh, Kirby and the Forgotten Land came out a month later after Elden Ring, and Kirby and the Forgotten Land has boomed. It was an absolute stellar thing. The fans love it, or there's much more love for it than Xenoblade and Splatoon that came out. I think more than Pokemon Legends. I'll have to check, but that's just Google ratings and whatnot. But yeah, I think Kirby will be one, and if Kirby gets a nomination, that will be sick. And I don't expect Kirby to win Game of the Year, but like, and while I can't say Kirby's my Game of the Year yet, I still have to see. Kirby definitely has the ability to get that nomination. But other than that, Elden Ring does have it what it takes to be Game of the Year. But I think it still has games to take care of, like Xenoblade, Kirby, and there was a Horizon Legends from what I heard is a really good game, but it's kind of, or yeah, Horizon Forbidden West or something like that range. But yeah, it's kind of whatever. And then there's God of War Ragnarok, which is another game that's coming out in November. That's gonna be interesting. We'll see how that bodes, because God of War, that game did take steal Game of the Year under Red Dead Redemption 2, so it's possible that Elden Ring could get snubbed. I mean, FromSoft already has a Game of the Year award in their hands with Sekiro, but like, it is possible for Elden Ring to be topped here. It is possible. It still is possible with the other games that already are out. I feel like we should take that to account, that we can't just say Game of the Awards are gonna be like that with Elden Ring. So like, just don't be so intuitive to it yet. But other than that, I think I really enjoyed Elden Ring. I had a lovely time with it. I'm down to do DLC. I'm down to do mods with it. It's not a masterpiece in my opinion. I can't say it's game of the year yet. I'd have to compare the games that I've played that have came out this year. I am playing a ton of Splatoon 3. I am loving the game right now. But I can't say for sure Splatoon 3 is on the same level as Kirby when it came out. So yeah, overall, thank you all so much for coming by. This playthrough is finally done. It was supposed to be done a long time, way later ago. But overall, it's whatever. That is, that's how it will be for now. Thank you all so much for coming by. I enjoyed your company, and yeah, we'll see you on the next playthrough. Probably first we'll have a few other sessions and whatnot. I'll have to edit this and get this video out right now. And so yeah, thank you all so much for coming by. Peace, peeps.